to Tea Talk, where the topics are real, relevant, and relaxing. It's Tea Talk time, and here is Lady O.
Well, thank you, Tracy. And I must say, you look beautiful today. Not that you don't ever look, you always look beautiful, but it seems like today you've knocked off some ages on your face. You look gorgeous. So, have you been to Lamique or to Kim Roxy or what's going on here?
Yeah, she did. I went to Lamique, and she did some customizing for me and made
Okay.
some put together some beautiful foundation, and she also helped with my eyebrows. So she is awesome.
Wow. Well, you know, she's going to be at the women's conference this year in July. So all of you that are watching, make sure you come to the conference to meet her, and then she can do the same thing for you. I know I've got to go in so she can take off at least 5 years from now, maybe not 10 years, but she can take off 5 years. I would really be happy. Get me
Yeah,
some
she's
custom
she
makeup.
does an awesome job. I'm like, wow, you got me looking like a little teenager again.
I know you look beautiful. I love it. So
Thank
we'll all
you,
have to
thank you,
get in line to get that makeup done with Kim.
thank you.
Yeah. So listen, we are so happy today to do part two of the segment we started last week. And as we get closer and closer to Election Day, our objective is to educate all of our viewers and for them to share the information that they learn from Tea Talk to other family and friends and on their Facebook page, da da da. So we want to get the word out, and it's so wonderful. We have Facebook that we can get it out. Now, we're not being partisan so much today. We're just really giving you the truth and the nuts and bolts of who's running, what their office does, how it impacts you. And today we're going to cover that last person. I think we got one more person we got to cover. And we also are going to talk about the issues. Why is it important that you need to vote? And understanding when you understand what people do that you're voting for, you will understand, be able to make a good judgment, I should say, about, oh, that person is for this issue that reflects what I feel and what I want done. You know that we vote on the people to go into office to do what it is we ask them to do. And so when we vote, the majority of the people win. So that's why you have to really get out the votes so that the people in office will represent you based upon the issues that you think that are important and the way you feel they should be acting upon those issues. So this is really important. So if you have not contacted one of your family and friends to get on, it's still time to go ahead and click a button and tell them to get on now because this is going to be real important. Also, we invite you to share this on your Facebook page and with your groups and your family and friends so that the word can get out more. So we have some awesome dynamic people who are on here today, and it's Eli and Angela, and this is what they do for a living. They really, and it's their passion too, to get informed. And as they get informed, then they can share with us the information that they have. So we don't have to go and try to research ourselves all of this stuff. They already know it. And so they're giving it to you for free, right? So they are also going to be at our women's conference as they're going to be talking about another segment. So there's about 4 different segments that we have leading up to getting us ready to vote and to make a great impact with our vote. So don't miss them at the conference as well. So the women's conference is July 14th, 15th, and 16th. So make sure that you put that on your calendar, save the date, go to myfirstmet.com and find out more about the conference, and let us know if you want to come, if you need information, if you have a booth you want to set up, there are booths available as well. So without further ado, by now you should have had a chance to talk to everybody. And that conference is the 15th, 16th, 17th. I'm sorry, I said 14th. It's 15th, 16th, and 17th. And they're going to be there on the 16th, which is Saturday. But the conference is 3 days, and we invite you to go ahead and get registered because it is going to be an amazing time as we find out what's next for the women in Texas, the women in America. And so no matter where you're listening from, just plan to be here at the conference July 15th, 16th, and 17th. Okay. So without further ado, I want to bring to you Eli Holiday. Eli, you say hello.
Hi, everyone. I'm Eli. I'm an organizer with TMO.
Okay, great to have you. And Angela?
Hello, I'm Angela Martin Greer. I'm a leader with TMO and a member of First Metropolitan Church.
Okay, great. Well, great to have you all. So let's get right into this because you know the time flies when you're having fun. You all have so much information to cover today. So let's go ahead and take up where we left off. Could someone kind of summarize the positions that we did last week, and then we'll talk about the one we're going to do this week. So I don't know, Eli, Angela, whoever wants to just kind of do a little.
Eli, if you could get us started, that would be great.
Yeah. I'm not going to go through every position we did last week. I'm just going to say very briefly, because it's a midterm, a lot of people don't vote. The presidential election is kind of the one that gets people excited, that people think of as like, oh, this is like kind of like the sexy election, right? This is the one that people want to go for. But because this is the first year after census results came back for our state specifically, this is a very important election for Texas. Every county judge is up for re-election. Half of all county commissioners are up for re-election. Every county senator, or every state senator, every state representative, every statewide position, so governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, Texas comptroller. This is a really important election. Honestly, it would be quicker to list the positions that are not up for re-election than the ones that are up for re-election. So please get out there and vote.
Okay, thank you, Eli. And that's very important to know, especially for Texans. This is our opportunity for change if you want change. If you want it to stay the same, then don't vote. If you want it to stay the same, then you can just not put forth any effort. But it's an opportunity that if you do want change, then you can do that. And so that kind of segues into what we're going to do today. Why would you want change? You got to know what the issues are. Why do we need change, or why do we need to keep the people in place, whatever. But you cannot make a good decision unless you're informed. And so that's what we're going to be doing today. Angela, you want to start us off with the first person we're going to cover? Is that Eli who's going to do that first office or position that we didn't cover last week?
Actually, that's going to be Eli. And Eli, are you in the position to share your screen? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. Please do not mind the 100 or so tabs that I have open, but
okay. We don't see them.
yeah, whatever.
Okay.
Did we talked about? Yeah, we did talk about this.
You know what? Let's start there, because we really needed to talk about that rejoin of the lines and how things are being navigated to restrict our voting, even though we'll talk about it more at the conference. But can you start there?
Yeah, on this slide right here. Yeah, so as I mentioned briefly, and as Lydia was just talking about, one of the reasons that so many seats are up for re-election this cycle is because this is the first cycle where census results have come back. And so basically every 10 years, the government does a census, and the results of that census inform the new legislative maps. So district shift, who your elected representative is might be different, and it's a chance for parties, especially whichever party happens to control the legislature, to sort of cement any control that they might have or potentially lose control.
Can I jump in there 1 minute, Eli? Because I meant to say this last week and I want to make sure you cover it. When the census thing was out, we had so many people going door to door, calling. We did sessions on it, programs on it, education on it, and the census was a huge success. However, instead of us getting more people representing those districts, they chose to redraw the lines and put new people. I want you to cover that, because I was really like, wow, even though we tried to do this, they still went back behind our backs and redrew it and used the census that we worked so hard for to their advantage.
Yeah, so the state of Texas grew a lot since the last census, and most of that change was from basically the Black and Hispanic communities, is where the majority of that growth in the state is coming from. And yet the way that the legislative maps end up getting drawn, it is predominantly white areas that have seen a growth in power and a growth in representation. And that's done through we don't have to get into the very specifics here, but basically that's done through a process called cracking and packing, where you take areas like Houston, for example, that are very pro one party or very pro certain issues, or a very specific ethnicity, and you hyper concentrate them in some districts. So there are districts that are something like 99, or not maybe 99, but like 90% minority, and then you spread them out in other areas. So you have these places of hyper concentration, and then you have a bunch of other areas right around that have relatively low concentration. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and it's to weaken the power of the vote in that district, which is what we were trying to get through the census, was to get more representatives from that district, but instead they chopped it up. And when I say they, would I be correct in saying it was our Texas government?
The state legislature drew the lines.
State legislators, the governor, and all of the people. They took what we did and said, "Oh, y'all got all these people? Well, let me chop it up, so we can not have you all cannot have as much power with your vote." So we'll cover that a little bit more too. We have the conference, but go ahead.
Well, and thankfully, Houston is not as bad as other areas in the state. If you want to look at some pretty egregious examples of cracking and packing, I recommend looking at the map in and around Dallas-Fort Worth. Yeah.
It's
Houston
awful.
Is not. Yeah.
Hispanics don't even have any representation at all. I'm told in some areas they.
Yeah, well, they did again, if you want to go check that out, you go look at that. But to me, it looks pretty egregious. Houston is not so bad. What was done in and around Houston, essentially, it took right or left-leaning districts and it made them more right or left-leaning, right? So a district that used to be maybe like R+3 is now R+7, or a district that used to be D+4 is now maybe D+8. So it's more difficult for these parties to lose those seats. And I would say, regardless of your political affiliation, that's bad for the average person, because the more competitive a district is, the more the elected representatives from that district have to listen to the people in their district, because they can't afford to offend anyone. They have to listen to their constituents because they are likely to have a tough race. And when you make districts that are not very competitive, that are, these sort of, basically it would take an act from upon high to sort of unseat one party to the other. They don't have to listen to they don't have to listen to the people in their district as much.
Let me just add something else to that as a question, just kind of thought. So and I know a couple of people are saying, well, I don't have to really worry about losing my seat. Well, if they're not losing their seats, that means it's going to stay the same. And do you want it to stay the same? They want it to stay the same because right now, one party is running Texas over the other party, and they want to keep it that way. So it may look like it's equitable, but in the other end, it's really not. It's not what we planned, because what we planned with the census was to have more representation in that area where there was a large population of Hispanics or people, whatever the census said. But if they had used the same lines and given more representatives in that area, then it would be a little bit different here. It wouldn't be equitable as far as everybody is going to keep their seat. It would mean that we would get some new people in there, some more people to represent the true diversity that the census showed that there was. But now it's chopped up, my understanding, so that all the Hispanic growth and so forth, it's the same. But they got it chopped up. So anyway, that's my little thoughts.
Well, and the reason that I have this particular map pulled up is because this is the congressional district that First Met falls under, which is Congressional District 38, which is a new congressional district that was added to the Houston area. We didn't used to have this. And again, I want to stress, TMO is nonpartisan. This is sort of a nonpartisan analysis.
Right. It's just the facts, the truth.
Just the facts of sort of how it is. And I think, so this is sort of, that's the city proper down here on the bottom, and then it stretches sort of up into the countryside and picks up some other areas. And this is the map that I really want to focus on right here. So when you vote, you're broken up into these blocks called precincts. We don't need to worry too much about that, but it's kind of like a unit for how you analyze things. It's the lowest collection point for data when people collect data about elections. And this map right here shows turnout in the primaries. And one of the things, so the more green it is, the more people voted in the primaries.
Okay, this talks about where people voted, you say?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
And
I want to go back a couple of ones and just say one thing. Okay, go back that one. So we are the blue, that's 38, right?
Yep.
So I'm just looking at how that's chopped up like that. And at the conference, we'll look at it and compare what it was and the difference that they did, because it really is chopped up pretty complex there. I don't know what the purpose of that is, but I'm sure there is a purpose. And I wanted people just to really look at how they carve out certain sections, exclude certain areas, and include this particular area. There's a reason for that. So we're going to talk about that more at the conference, but go ahead and go on to where you were.
Well, and I think you raised a really interesting point there, Lydia, which is, so First Met is, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a little tiny black dot right here where my cursor is.
In the orange
First
area?
Met. Yeah, okay. That's First Met right down there.
Okay.
And so the areas, so the more green an area is, the more people voted there, and the more red an area is, the less people voted there. So what are you seeing on this map right here?
So yeah, orange, we didn't vote hardly any. And they're down below, that little area is green. So I guess they would look at that and say, wow, they voted a lot. And so are they going to be an asset to that drawing of that line the way it is? Or is it going to be a negative something? So I don't know. Who can you tell if what people voted that, or just the overall voting?
So this is just the overall trend in that precinct. But what I can say about this area down here is that, so this district overall is a likely Republican district. I think it's R plus 10 or something like that. It's very strong. Again, we're nonpartisan. I'm just giving you sort of the way that things are in this district.
Right.
But this area down here is like Memorial and the Villages, right? So one of the things I want to flag that I think is really interesting about this map is that this is one of the wealthiest parts of Houston, right? I mean, when we talk about areas like Hunters Creek Village, Piney Point Village, maybe River Oaks is sort of wealthier, but this is certainly second. And as you start to go further north, and especially up in these parts, you quickly start to sort of move down the socioeconomic strata. So this district is built basically in such a way that these few very wealthy homes in the south part of the district and in the villages who vote at incredibly high rates compared to the rest of the district are going to pick who the representative is, because frankly, people up here don't vote very much.
Right. And so that few people down there are going to be controlling what is done for all the people. Now, is this our whole blue district right here that you just, is this all blue?
Yep.
Okay.
This is Congressional District 38.
38, this is our district. This is real important. So you can see how if they're voting strongly at the bottom, all these people way up here, who they're controlling, and you can see why they would want to carve that segment out to include them. They could make a great difference in that particular district.
And you know, some of these precincts right around the church, they voted at a rate of, you know, less than 1 in 20 people basically voted in the primaries. And
so this is the evidence that we need to know that voting, it can have a great impact. And that we have a great opportunity and capacity to make a change if we could get out the vote.
Well, and something, especially in areas like this where people really don't vote, something that I hear from people a lot when I'm working with them is, you know, why vote? Like, you know, my elected representative, you know, never caters to my needs, never addresses my concerns, never does any of this stuff. And my response is always like, well, yeah, of course not. You know, if I was your elected representative and you're in this part of town that like never votes, I wouldn't cater to your needs either, because you're not the people that are voting. If you start to vote, then that's going to change.
Exactly. That's a very good point. Very good point. Thank you. We'll
So,
definitely have to bring that out at the conference as well for others to see.
well, and I think this is, and you guys do with this what you will, and we're happy to help. But this is an opportunity too, right? If less than 1 in 20 people vote, that's a very easy area to boost voter turnout. To go walk neighborhoods, knock doors, call people, invite them to civic meetings, and say, we want to engage you in this process. We want you to vote. We want you to be engaged.
Very good. Thank you.
I think, Angela, are you doing? Oh, here's
Yeah.
the Congressional District is one of our federal level representatives. They serve 2-year terms. They're in Congress. They're in the lower house. They're the ones that sort of originate tax bills or any revenue. They don't do things like appoint or vote on Supreme Court nominees or do stuff like that. But it is a federal level position, very powerful, very important.
Very important. And that's our district.
Mm-hmm.
That's our district we're talking about. So I thought we would definitely bring that to you since we're filming from this particular district, and most of the people that watch are from this district. So
yeah,
that's great. So that person, so do you know the names of the people who are on the ballot for this position?
It's going to be Duncan Klusman for the Democrats and Wesley Hunt. Yeah, Duncan Klusman for the Democrats and Wesley Hunt for the Republicans.
Okay. And what we suggest you do is go look up those names and go to their website and see what they are for. And don't vote on a person just because they're Black or because they're your friends or your friend says, hey, this is who I'm voting for, you need to vote for too. You need to go see what they represent and look at their voting records and things like that, their beliefs and their philosophies. Okay. So we're definitely voting for this person in our district, First Metropolitan. Okay.
Okay,
right,
Eli, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
If you can go ahead and switch to the next slide. Thank you. So next we're going to talk about gun violence.
Issues. This is why
issues.
You need to vote. What you're looking on the people who represent you on these issues. Okay, go ahead.
So as everyone is aware, it's an enormous amount of mass shootings in this country, over 24 thus far this year, with the most recent being at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, where we had 19 students and 2 teachers to be killed. The biggest thing we need to be aware of is that instead of the governor calling for there to be a special session to kind of look at and address these issues, he's more calling for there to be just a special review committee where they're going to investigate and look at, what could have caused it and ways to combat that. But if everyone recalls back years ago when we had the shooting, I believe it was at Santa Fe, they had a special review committee then. And unfortunately, no legislation came out of that. So what's being called
and
for?
And I'm going to interrupt you just a minute, because that's why I'm just sitting here holding my hands. Like, I am so sick and tired of just getting a committee together to look at what's going on. I mean, you'd have to be deaf and blind to not know what's going on. We don't need another committee. We need some results, not just, and so I'm just so sick and tired of that. But anyway, that's my own personal beliefs that I think that we don't need another committee when you have 22 people from a schoolhouse being shot and killed, teachers, and then we have one on there that people don't talk about, that one teacher who got killed, her husband had a heart attack and died. Now you have, I think they have 4 children that don't have a mom and dad. I mean,
exactly.
It's crazy. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. I just had to jump in there on that doggone having another special review. We don't need a review. We need some results. Okay, go ahead.
Right. And the thing is, there's been surveys done, and the vast majority of Texans, even responsible gun owners, believe that we should have common sense background checks, and we should also have red flag laws. And for those of you who don't know what red flag laws are, those are people that have been identified as a risk to themselves and others, people with mental incapacities, so that those people's guns can be temporarily taken away from them until they're reassessed and deemed to be of the right state of mind to have those guns.
Exactly.
And people have also are supporting moving the minimum gun age, ownership age, up from 18 to 21. So
Okay.
expanding the background checks and all of these types of things are options. But if we don't have a special legislative session, the next legislative session won't be this year. It won't be till next year.
Right.
Or the year
Okay.
after.
Let me ask you, let me jump in here real quickly, Angela, because this is what infuriates me so much. The people of Texas want this, but the people who are in government leadership are saying no. So how do you say no when the majority of the people want it? So how is that? Who's making these decisions about even the people want it, and who's making the decisions that we're not going to do it?
Well, as you stated, the legislators are the ones that make those decisions. And you have to ask yourself, who are they representing? There are very strong lobbies that are at work or at play here in Texas. And I'm sure if you watched the news, you saw that the NRA just had their convention here, I think it was a couple of weekends ago. So the gun lobby is very active. I believe they've moved their headquarters here to Texas. So they have a lot of influence over the legislators because they donate to their campaigns. So again, you have to ask yourself the question, the people that are in office, who are they representing? Are they representing me, the individual who's voting? Or are they representing lobbyists? Are they representing special interest?
Right, because when you vote, you're giving them kind of like, I call it, what do you call them? People get control over your life. You're signing
a power of attorney.
Power of attorney. You're giving the person you vote for the power of attorney to represent you. But you can see by what's happening is even though you give them that and you put them in there, they still don't do what the Texas people want. And that just baffles me. So I would say when you're looking at who you're going to vote for, this should definitely be something you're looking to see. Do they support, gun violence, or do they do? When I say gun violence, I mean, do they support an 18-year-old having or even a 21, or even a human being, period, having that kind of a rifle to go out and shoot meat to eat? You can't even eat the meat once you shoot up an animal like that with that. It's got to be that you ask yourself, what are they buying these things to shoot up? And it's mass people. It's masses of people. So you got to look at that. And no matter what party you are, I think we need to start jumping parties and forget the party and look at the person over the party. What do they represent? Because if you don't do that, we're going to continue to get worse. And you can see already we have no control over the law, even though we vote the people in there. The majority of the people say, yes, we want background checks and da-da-da. And the people that we put in there say, we're not doing it. Okay, so that's going to be a really big one this year.
Exactly. That's why it's important to know what the issues are and know where people stand on those issues.
Very good. Okay, what's the next one?
So,
Angela, do you want to try and pull up? I don't have the slides for education and police reform. Can you pull those up really quick, and I'll talk about Medicaid expansion?
Okay, there it is.
Sure. So, everybody knows what Medicaid expansion is. And I just really quickly, I want to dispel some myths really quick. The first is this idea that only people that don't work don't have medical coverage, because increasingly what we're finding is that there are many Texans, 1.2 million to be exact, who don't receive health insurance from their employers. So they're some sort of hourly or part-time worker that does not receive health insurance, but they make too much money from their jobs to opt into a public health insurance program. So they can't benefit from our state level Medicaid. They can't benefit from the ACA. And this leaves these Texans in something we call a coverage gap, basically, right? So they're not receiving coverage from their employer, but they're also making too much to receive health insurance. So this leaves them in this really tough position where they have to say, am I going to go uninsured, or am I going to opt into private health insurance? And private health insurance is extremely expensive.
Exactly. They can't afford it.
No, it's, the stat we have here is that for a family to opt into health insurance, that's a fourth of that family's payment, right? That's basically like you have another car payment, you have another rent payment every month. I mean, it's a huge amount of money. And so many of these Texans choose to go uninsured because they don't really have the option to pay for private health insurance. So Texas, for I believe 6 years in a row, is the most medically uninsured and underinsured state in the country. And
Wow.
ultimately, when somebody shows up at a hospital and they don't have medical insurance, the state ends up paying for that in some way anyway, right? And then these people get, less good care at a
Care.
hospital. Yeah.
They
And
can't do the test because it's too expensive. And so they're giving you a Band-Aid as
yeah,
opposed to what people who have insurance can do.
yeah.
And I wanted to just bring this out too. And I know your slide says it, but nearly 1.2 million working Texans. And when you look at the working Texans people, and I think they're referring to, is typically your minority people that do your service jobs, your low income jobs, where the person who's hired them cannot afford to pay for the insurance, or in some cases, they don't want to pay for the insurance and they don't have to. So therefore, you have your working class, which is predominantly Black and brown and Asians and things like that, who fall in that gap. They cannot afford it themselves. Their employers won't do it. And then I heard somewhere, and I don't know if I don't want to put you on the spot, but you can check into it later, that Texas was offered some money to help with that, and they refused it. Is that the wrong thing? That they refused it because they don't want to be held accountable for how the money's spent, and they don't want to play by the rules. So there is money that was available to us that we didn't get. Was it with the Obamacare? I can't remember.
Yeah. So, and it's not just that it was offered; it is an open offer that the legislature continues to refuse to choose. And so, at any point, if this legislature voted, Texas could choose to expand Medicaid, and that process would actually save the state money, because all you're doing when you're choosing to opt into Medicaid expansion, is you're agreeing to receive federal monies into the state. So it would cost the state nothing, and it would probably save us money, really, is what, sort of healthcare professionals and economists at the state level sort of all agree. And yet we continually refuse to do this. So we're literally allowing working families, to go uninsured, receive inferior coverage, and often die from things that are totally preventable.
Exactly. And that's what makes me so upset, because people go out and vote for these people who don't care about you or your families, that they will let you and your family die, you and your family not have insurance or have any kind of good medical care. And while their families have the best, but they say they are for you, and you go and vote for them every year and allow them to get in office. So I think that's something that is really a big thing for Texas to know. And especially, our lower servant, what do you call them? Like us, people that work in community service, not community service. They work in the jobs like the restaurants and the hotel, and
Service workers.
Yes, service workers. Thank you. And so you need to put people in office who care about you, that will give you stuff that doesn't cost them anything. It's already there on the table, but they're refusing to accept it selfishly, and then it affects you and your child, and your grandmother, or your auntie, who cannot get the good service, and they end up dying or suffering unnecessarily. So that's a good one. And I'm glad you explained that one, because I really didn't understand fully what Medicaid expansion meant myself, because it doesn't affect me. I've always had insurance. And so this is something that even insured people need to know about, because I care about other people, and I have insurance. I don't have to worry about it for me and my family, but I care about other families, and then that they have it. So I would want to vote for somebody, especially since it's not costing me anything. It's not costing the government anything. It would even save us money. I don't get it why we wouldn't have it. So that's very good. Okay, thank you for expounding on Medicaid expansion.
All right. Angela, do you have that stuff pulled up? Do you want me to stop sharing and you can start? Or I can talk about here. How would I talk about 313?
Right. I was going to ask you to talk about that if you don't mind.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got it. All right. So I talked a little bit about 313 last time, and fair warning, this is a topic that makes me kind of mad personally. So I'm gonna try and stay calm.
Yeah. I'm mad too. I'm mad too. Let's go.
Yeah. So basically, 313 is this corporate welfare program that gives corporations tax breaks from school property taxes. And it's a program that TMO and allies around the state, with bipartisan support, killed in the legislature in the last legislative cycle. In fact, some of our strongest allies were from the Tea Party. So it had sort of bipartisan opposition to this bill, because really what it is at its core, I don't want to make it too complicated, but really what it is at its core is it's the state legislature asking working families, so you and me, to pay ExxonMobil's taxes, to pay Elon Musk's taxes, to pay Texas Instruments taxes, to pay these multi-billion-dollar corporations. They want us to pay their taxes for them. Wow. And for me, that makes me mad.
Yeah, all the money they have, and we're already supporting their corporations and so forth. And they've got all this money and they want to come out of our taxes. So I can see why that would be a bipartisan thing, because I know one thing about my Republican friends that I know, they really get upset when you start dipping into their taxes. So having us to, and we're already paying enough. We pay more taxes than a lot of these big corporations do. And then they want to dip into our little bit. So talk about it. Let's look at Sci-Fair, because we're in Sci-Fair. What is Sci-Fair doing? Explain that to us.
Okay, so what's going on the screen right now is, so these taxes, again, I don't want to get too in the weeds here, but basically these taxes work by an abatement from local school property taxes, which is usually the highest taxes that folks in Texas will pay. And then the school board is reimbursed for that abatement that they've granted the company. And usually they're given a little kickback in addition. So we did an analysis to say, okay, what if instead of giving corporations these tax breaks, instead we just gave out school funding? We just gave money to folks. Like how many? Because the talk was that this is a win-win for school districts. The school districts only benefit from these programs. So our analysis was to say, what if we gave some of this money to school districts instead? How much potential funding are they losing, or how much funding are they gaining through this program? And what we found is that 95% of Texas public school students would benefit under Chapter 313 sort of being disbanded, and that money, 95%. Wow. And 5% of students benefit right now and would suffer from 313 going under. And just look at the school districts. So these over here, the red, these are the people that are suffering under 313 and that would benefit from the program being killed and that money being allocated towards public funding.
And we're in there, Sci-Fair,
to the tune of about $15 million a year.
Wow.
Which is, I don't know what, like 150 teachers, probably more than that. That's not very good math on my part. It's a huge amount of money. Is the point.
Yeah, you saying 15 million? What'd you say?
Yeah. 15 million.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could do something with that.
Yeah. It's a huge amount of money that Sci-Fair is potentially losing. Look at HISD, 28 million, right? I mean, look at Katy, look at Fort Bend, look at Aldine. Look at all of these big losers that are in our area.
And I'm looking on the other side, the winners, these are smaller school districts, but do they have big corporation, all places in their area?
Yeah, so the winners are in areas that are like pretty oil rich usually. So, if, Barbers Hill is not like a huge school district. So if Exxon comes in and they want to build a facility, they get a lot of money per student for doing that.
Right.
So the other thing that I think is, interesting about this is we killed this program. Like we sundowned it. It did not get renewed. And yet, in this most recent legislative cycle, so when you sundown a program, it doesn't end until the following year. So it technically ends on December 31st of this year. Okay. Right now, usually there's about 70 to 80 313 applications for this tax exempt status a year. This year so far, because the program is being sundown and it's the last year that people can get it, there's been 155 applications for 313 agreements. Or what we're calling it hogs to the trough, because it's all of these companies that are trying to get in while they still can and get these tax exempt statuses. And if all of these agreements are granted, it would be literally billions of dollars over the next 10 years, billions of dollars per year over the next 10 years. So we're very concerned.
I'm sorry, you said over the next 10 years?
Yeah, it's a 10-year agreement.
So if you get it, you got it for 10 years.
Yes.
So is this is going to be expiring in that they can, y'all sundowned it, but they can do, it has to wait until, it still stays in effect until the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And if
you
they
can still
get
apply
it
until, yeah.
Okay. So
well,
then after the end of the year, what happens? They can't do it anymore?
They can't apply for anymore.
Okay. So you can see why they're really going, so, okay, so what can we do about that? Nothing?
Well, you should call the comptroller and tell them, hey, I do not agree with all these 313 agreements. And the other thing you should do is, this is a ton of money, right? This is a lot of money. So there's business interests around the state who want to revive this or some similar program in the next legislative cycle. So as people are running for office in the run up to the November elections, ask them where they stand on a 313 style program. And you know, tell them that you don't agree with this, that you don't think you should pay Elon Musk's taxes for him.
Wow. But there's going to be 100 school districts that have applied companies rather, who have applied, corporations, who could really affect these school districts for the next 10 years.
And
do you know
the other thing to be mindful of is going to these school board meetings, because unfortunately, a lot of the school boards don't understand the ramifications of this. They see it as Eli explained, they think it's a win. But if they understood exactly how this works, when the ones that we've educated, the superintendents and so forth, once we've educated them, they've really thought, you know, about not approving some of these, and some of these did not get approved by their school boards. So it's important that we show up at the school board meetings when they're coming before the board and speak out against them accepting these Chapter 313 agreements, because the school boards are the ones that are voting on them.
Right. Do you know if Cy-Fair's board is educated on that?
I don't think they have any pending 313 agreements.
Right. And the way we know is they're supposed to have that in the language of the agenda for the school board. It's supposed to state whether or not it comes under Chapter 313. So that's one way that you can know.
Okay.
That it's,
well,
our last
meeting is Monday. I believe it's Monday of this week. So I don't know. I do want to encourage everybody to go out to the school board meetings. I know it's been hectic, but we got to go out because the other people are showing up, and they're the ones they said the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So they may not know, but I think it might be good for us to, oh my goodness, we're running. I think it might be good for us to inform, I've set a meeting with our school board so that they will understand fully what they're voting on. Okay, let's go on. They said we got 15 minutes left. Oh, wow.
Yeah, sorry, I told you. This one makes me kind of mad.
I know, that one, me too. Go ahead, I'm sorry. Education.
That's okay. I'm up for the next one, which is on education, and kind of goes into what we were just talking about. Just give me a second here. So basically, as you know, the state of Texas received $18 billion in federal relief funds for COVID from the government. And those funds were finally released back in April. And as you can see on the list, it shows what districts got how much money, and Cy-Fair is down for $189 million. And most of what Cy-Fair is going to use that money for is going to be towards after school programs, extending school days in the school year to try to make up for the learning loss. I'm sure everyone's aware that when we had to switch to virtual learning, it just wasn't as effective for the students. Some students don't learn as well that way. Plus we had issues with whether or not people had internet connectivity, whether they had laptops to actually work from. You had the issue with parents having to take off work or not having anyone at the home to be with the children, to kind of help them to learn. So these are the things that the school districts are going to try and do with those funds. And the allowable activities are available starting from March of 2020 all the way through September 2024. So we just need to make sure that the rest of those monies, only 12.4 billion had been released up through April. So we need to just make sure that the rest of that money is released and distributed to our schools so that they can do these things.
Yeah, I know Cy Fair did address that at one of the school board meetings. It was the last one, the one before, and saying they had put theirs, I think they said like in thirds, like they're saving part of it for that last part. So I think we do need to be, they need to be a little bit more specific about what it is. But I think there are restrictions that they have to use it on this, or is that what it is? Or can they use it on anything?
No, there are restrictions on how they can use the monies. It has to be used towards, it has to go to education, and it has to be used for any issues that arose during COVID or any kind of learning loss.
Okay.
And of course, Texas, as always, does not like for the federal government to tell them how to use the monies. So one of the things that we were up against was them supplanting the money. So what that means is the monies came into the state, and what they would do is, if they say they got $1 billion, they would take $1 billion out of the education budget and replace it with the $1 billion that they got from the federal government, and then they could turn around and use that $1 billion somewhere else. So instead of
low. That is low.
Yeah, it really is. So instead of that money being used as addition to the education budget that the state government had already approved, they can now use that $1 billion elsewhere. And so we're actually short that $1 billion if you think about it for education.
That's real important to know too, because you know, we're always short, and of course that affects the teachers, and it also affects the students and the quality of education. And so if we're always in the hole, I think that money was to make sure that we got above water, not take away that same amount of, so we don't make any progress. It's like they got nothing. If they were supposed to get, let's say $1 billion, and they took $1 billion out of the education fund and said, okay, we're not giving that to you all because you're getting $1 billion over here. Well, then where is the increase? It's almost like, you know, a slap in the face. We took it and we're gonna play hide and seek with it, make you feel like, you know, you don't know what's going on, but you know, we need to know what's going on. Okay, so that's really good that we could ask people. And by the way, guys, we are going to have an accountability session. And so this is where we're going to be inviting the people too that are running for office to ask them, how do they feel? Where do they stand on these particular issues? And so Eli, Angela, at the very end, don't let me forget you all to kind of remind them about what an accountability session is, and we'll let them know when it's going to be. Okay, next.
Okay, so next we can take a quick look at police reform. So as you know, with the murder of George Floyd 2 years ago now, certain bills were put forth before the legislative session in order to address the issues that came up out of his killing. So the bills that actually passed were Senate Bill 69, which is banning chokeholds and requiring duty to intervene by police officers. House Bill 3712, where police training reform, so no chokeholds, and again, duty to intervene. Senate Bill 2212, which is the duty to render aid. A lot of these things you would think were already required, but they weren't actually in the law. And then you had House Bill 929, which is also known as Bo's Law, and that's the one that's dealing with body cameras and the entirety of an investigation. So making sure that when these things happen, that these incidents are actually investigated.
Okay.
And one of the things also that has come up is Chief Fenner has made a commitment to releasing body cam video, I believe 30 days following an incident. And the mayor for the city of Houston also has One Houston initiative that's in place to kind of address the issues that are coming up with regards to the police. Unfortunately, the aspects of what was the George Floyd bill that did not pass is ending qualified immunity, requiring de-escalation, and ending arrests for non-jailable offenses, which was formerly known as the Sandra Bland Act. So there's
Okay.
still much work to be done.
Yeah, they left it off, and I really think that the qualified immunity is one of the big ones for me because can y'all explain what that means real quickly?
Yeah, so for qualified immunity, it's basically stating that the police officer cannot be held individually liable for his or her actions during an arrest or incident.
And that's really concerning because they know that it's nothing you can do, so we can do what we want to do.
Exactly. You can go after the police department, but not the individual.
But not the person. Mm-hmm.
And their argument, as far as the police union is concerned, is that you can bankrupt a person, their household, and so forth. But if you think about it, if a doctor does a botched surgery, you can sue that doctor and they have to have malpractice insurance to cover that. So taking away the ability for everyday citizens to hold individuals in law enforcement accountable is something that we really need to, like I said, keep working on to try to get that so that we have that ability.
Yeah. Because if you know nothing's going to happen, I mean, you can just do what you want to do. That you got that qualified immunity. They can't sue me or sue my family, whatever. But if you know that you're doing something wrong and you will be held accountable for it, I think police officers would think twice. And so I think that's a really big one. The Sandra Bland thing was really, I mean, an awful thing too that happened here in the state of Texas. So I don't know, do those bills go back to be, or somebody has to implement them or issue them?
Yes, it would have to be reintroduced.
Reintroduced, so that's something that we could ask. Okay, very good. So we definitely need our police reform, people who are for that, and we can look and see who voted for those that helped it to pass in the past, and also hopefully we'll get the others. See who would like to push to help get the others in there, especially the qualified immunity. I think that would stop a lot of stuff. Okay, let's go to the next one.
So if you can go ahead, Eli, and turn to, since we're short on time, the last couple of slides.
The infrastructure, you passed that one up. Did you want to talk about that one just about a minute or two? Because I know that's that one, that grid. I mean, because we're here having 100 degrees weather in June, and August and September is usually 100-degree weather. And I'm hearing that our grids are in jeopardy and that we've not had any response from what happened in the freeze. I just had to cut down 4 trees in my backyard, which cost me $1,200 to cut them down because they were damaged from the freeze. That's not even a portion of what happened with my flooding in my house and all the things I had to do. So Texans were out of a lot of money and time and energy, and people even died. So what's going on with that, and what is this infrastructure, electric grid, and flooding? Well, still struggling with Harvey.
To summarize it, basically, weatherization needs to happen for the grid. And right now, the cost of that is being passed on to families. Mm-hmm. What we were wanting to have happen was that these various electric companies would have to pay for that. They profited for the past decade off of the deregulation of the electric grid, and thus should have been investing in their own equipment, but they did not. So what we tried to do was put forth legislation during the last legislative session that would have addressed that and required them to bear the brunt of the cost. However, again, that did not happen. So some of the weatherization has been mandated, but the question is, who's going to pay that? Who's going to cover that cost? And it looks like that's being passed on to consumers over the next 10 years.
Again, people who don't have money. Yeah.
Again, and the Public Utility Commission, as well as ERCOT and the State Energy Advisory Board, are the ones that oversee how this goes about. Mm-hmm. So we just want to make sure that the companies are the ones who benefited, so they're the ones who are going to pay the cost and not the individuals. Eli, did you want to add anything in that?
Well, I wanted to know, do you all know, can you tell us who is responsible for making the decisions concerning the electric grid and flooding?
The entities responsible are, of course, our state legislators, mainly the Public Utility Commission, who was appointed by our governor, and the advisory board. ERCOT, which got a lot of flack, caught a lot of flack in the news, actually is just appointed, and they're appointed by the governor, just as a Public Utility Commission is. So it ultimately is with our state legislators and our governor.
And ultimately our governor. It's what I've been learning, because everybody's appointed by the governor. Everybody's, given their authority by the governor. And as you said last time, the governor is like the president of the state of Texas. So this is all falling within his jurisdiction, flooding and electric grid and all those kind of things. Okay, we've got about 2 minutes left. So go ahead. Which one were y'all taking us to next?
Well, we're going to just quickly look at what is up for the elections. And as you can see, Eli pretty much already mentioned pretty much every position in the state of Texas is up for election this year. So we definitely need to pay attention to those races. Eli, split to the next slide quickly.
And I told them at the last time too, go back to the slide again. I said, if you've got your camera, take a picture of this so you will know who to go online, look at their websites and whatever. And when you're going in to vote, you will know, you can't take the camera, but you can take a picture of that and take a little piece of paper. If you want to vote for the same, or do you want to vote for something different for the change? And we've given you the issues to let you see who does whatever. And if you're happy with it, great. If you're not happy with it, then you need to make a change from this slate. So I wanted you to get a picture of that. Okay, go ahead.
So then the important dates that are coming up, the last day to register to vote is October 11th. There's going to be an accountability session this fall, the date to be announced. Early voting is from October 24th to November 4th. The last day to register for mail-in ballots is October 28th, and then election day, the most important day on this list, is November 8th. Eli, next slide. So
I just want to say one thing about that accountability session. Accountability session, because a lot of people don't know that term. I mentioned it earlier, but can you tell them in maybe 1-2 sentences about what an accountability session is?
Eli, can you go ahead and answer that?
Yeah, an accountability session is, that's why it's called accountability session, a place for constituents to hold their elected officials accountable. It's a meeting that, TMO, the IF network push. We invite elected representatives out, we pack a room full of people, and it is not a place for them to give their stump speech. It's not a place for them to do a campaign stop, and it's not their meeting. It's our meeting. It's the people who are running the sessions meeting. It's our place to say, these are our stories, these are our experiences. Will you vote yes or no this way, or will you work with us on this? And really the goal of that meeting is to get their public commitments to work on the issues that matter to us. And then agree for them to meet with us so that when they're elected, or if they're elected, we can go into their office and say, all right, you said you were going to work with us on these issues, so let's get down to it. What's the first step?
Hold them accountable. And it's nonpartisan, so you'll have people from both parties coming to share and asking them all the same questions to see where they stand. And so they have to agree to come. And so usually those people who want to hear from the public will come and state their story, state what they believe in, and then the public can vote on the person that is meeting their issues. And if they say they're going to do one thing, at this place is where we usually hold them accountable. We follow up after they've gotten in. Okay, very good. So move on to the next one.
So then the next steps, as Lady O mentioned, an accountability session and a election civic academy. And a civic academy is where we go in depth and explain whatever the topic is. For the election, it would be going through some of these similar items that we went through in this session, but also just giving people a little bit more information on the positions, how the issues, how those affect them, and then who's responsible as far as which office affects that particular issue.
Exactly. And
then,
don't
of
forget,
course,
she's put down here your voting locations too, where you can get more information, because we're gonna be having to stop in a few minutes. But harrisvotes.com, go on your website and get familiar with it, okay? And the other one, what is the other one? Is it the League of
it's the
Women
League of
Voters?
Women
Yeah,
Voters. So it's
Houston.
lwvhouston.org/voters-guide.
Right.
And that will give you information on not only the positions, the individuals running, and they've asked, a lot of times they ask questions of the candidates, and it gives you their responses so you can compare what these individuals are saying, as well as their background for the position.
Very good. Very good. Okay, well, like I told you, it's a lot to learn, but we're just really committed to making sure that you are informed so that you can make a good decision that's going to benefit our state. And this is the time to do it when election time is going on. And so we need to communicate our voices. We need to know what it is we need to have happen and know who the people are who are going to go and make that happen for us, so that we can have a safer state where our children are not getting killed in their classrooms and their teachers, where we can have a place where we can all have medical insurance. And so we're not having to let children die or grandparents die because they don't have insurance. So there's a lot of things at stake here, and we've tried to cover as much of them as we can. So I want to just say again, don't forget to save the date for the women's conference. We're going to have a panel, and we're going to talk a lot about the voting part of it, and what the strategy has been and what the strategy needs to be moving forward to get your candidate elected. And we will let you know the date for the accountability session. So look for those things. And above all, guys, you get yourself informed, get yourself involved, empower yourself so you can make a difference. So this state can be the proud state that we all call Texas for everyone. So thank you for joining us. We will see you next week at Tea Talk at 3 for Tea Talk with me. And pass this on to some other people. Don't just have it to yourself. Share, 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 share. And that's the way you're going to make a change in this state. Okay. Love you. See you next week. Bye-bye for now.